white tablecloths, suffocating silence. A Chicago restaurant where my entire life was about to shatter. My phone exploded with a notification. A bank alert I should have hidden. My brother Marcus lunged over, violating every boundary, and his eyes locked onto the screen. Then he laughed. Not joy. Not surprise. Asterisk. Pure greed. Within 30 seconds, my entire family discovered I had $6.8 million. Within 5 agonizing minutes, they revealed exactly who they'd always been. Predators dressed as parents. My name is Elena Brooks. I'm 27 years old. And this is the brutal truth about how one devastating dinner exposed the lie I'd been drowning in my entire life. If you've ever felt crushed by your own family's expectations, don't look away. Because what happened next will shake you to your core. The moment it all exploded. Let me drag you back to that suffocating table. Marcus ripped my phone from my hands before I could react. My mother's eyes widened with shock, then instantly hardened with something terrifying. Not my degree. Not my devastating hard work. Just the number burning on the screen. $6,847,293. Her face twisted. Not with pride. With rage that I'd hidden it. So, all this time, you were sitting on money while we struggled? Not how did you accomplish this incredible thing? Not we're overwhelmed with pride. Just venomous accusation. My father's voice dropped. Cold, calculated, threatening. We've been drowning trying to keep the business alive. You deliberately ignored us. My stomach turned. I had been helping, bleeding myself dry with anonymous transfers for 3 brutal years. Desperate rent assistance I never dared mention. But they never once asked how I was surviving. Only demanded whether I could sacrifice more. Then Marcus unleashed the sentence that destroyed everything. You owe me. I'm family.
Family.
As if that sacred word erased 27 years of being crushed under their indifference. I stared, paralyzed, around the table. At 3 people who had spent my entire shattered childhood drilling one merciless lesson into my soul. Your achievements are worthless. Your only purpose is to be exploited. And in that devastating moment, something inside me finally snapped. How? I actually made the money. They didn't dare ask me this at dinner. So let me expose the truth. While I was drowning at Northwestern studying data analytics, I was desperately freelancing. Brutal projects. Startups too broke to afford real consulting firms. One agonizing project, a logistics optimization tool for a failing regional delivery company, exploded into something powerful. They begged me to co-found. I gambled everything and said yes. I sacrificed sleep-working nights, destroyed myself studying mornings, built something nobody in my toxic family ever suspected existed. 3 relentless years after I graduated with my undergrad, a major firm crushed the bidding war and acquired the platform. My shares were worth a staggering $6.8 million after the government took their cut. I didn't tell my parents because money had always poisoned my family. Every single time Marcus failed spectacularly at something, and he failed constantly, the solution was always financial rescue. New desperate course. New unearned opportunity. New humiliating bailout. I had watched this toxic pattern destroy us my entire life. So I fiercely protected my silence. I guarded what I built with everything I had. Not because I was heartless. Because I knew exactly what would happen the instant they discovered it. And at that suffocating dinner table, I was devastatingly proven right. The childhood that made me invisible. You need to understand something crucial. This nightmare didn't start at that restaurant. It started when I was a helpless 8-year-old child. I grew up trapped outside Columbus, Ohio. My parents ran a struggling catering business, never stable, never secure, always suffocating under stress. And there was a brutal, unspoken hierarchy crushing our house. At the top, Marcus. Charismatic, explosive, wildly unpredictable. My parents worshipped him as sensitive. I learned a more honest word for it. Untouchable. When Marcus carelessly forgot his homework, my mother would desperately sit with him for hours. When I dominated a citywide science competition at 13, my certificate stayed forgotten, folded in a textbook. When Marcus barely won a regional soccer match, they obsessively framed the photo and hung it like a shrine above the fireplace. When I earned a partial scholarship to Northwestern through blood and sacrifice, my father's response shattered me. Good. Marcus might apply there someday too. That was it. No celebration. No acknowledgement. Just a devastating reminder that my accomplishments only mattered if they paved a path for the golden child. I learned early and painfully, don't take up space. Don't dare expect applause. So I stopped begging my parents to attend my events. I stopped desperately mentioning awards. I stopped explaining my shattered self. My bedroom became my only refuge from the suffocating house. That's where I frantically learned to code from free online courses. That's where I desperately taught myself statistics. That's where I built the skills that would eventually transform me into a millionaire. But none of that mattered to them. Because in their twisted version of reality, I wasn't supposed to need attention. I was supposed to be strong, which really meant exploitable. The only person who saw through the nightmare was my Aunt Clara, my mother's older sister. She lived alone, worked quietly as a librarian, never married. And she told me something that saved me. People violently ignore what threatens their version of the world. At the time, I couldn't fully grasp it. But sitting at that table, watching my family demand money they never helped me earn, I finally understood with crushing clarity. The confrontation. Back to the suffocating restaurant. They were still attacking, still demanding explanations for why I owed them my life. My mother leaned forward, voice trembling with manipulative fury. You've always been strong, Elena. Marcus desperately needs support. The same devastating sentence. Different decade. As if my strength was justification to exploit me instead of celebrate me. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I set down my napkin with shaking hands, stood up, and said, I didn't hide this from you. I desperately protected it from toxic expectations you never once placed on yourselves. Shocked silence. My father's jaw clenched, threatening, dangerous. So that's it? You're just going to abandon your family? And that word again. Family. As if it was a binding contract I never signed. As if love was measured in bleeding transfers and desperate bailouts. I looked directly at Marcus. At the brother, who never once asked how I was drowning, but always knew precisely when to demand money. I looked at my parents. At two people who had spent 27 brutal years teaching me that I mattered nothing. And I said the words that obliterated everything. I will not be the solution to problems you refuse to solve. Then I paid the bill with shaking hands. And I walked out. The aftermath. They didn't let it go. Relentless calls. Desperate texts. Manipulative voicemails. Relatives I hadn't spoken to in years suddenly obsessed over family values. Marcus posted online, weaponizing social media. Framed himself as the heartbroken, abandoned sibling. Deliberately left out the part where I had financially bled for them for years while being emotionally destroyed. I blocked most of them instantly. For the ones I couldn't escape, I hired a lawyer. Powerful, uncompromising. Set boundaries. In writing. Legally binding. Cut financial access completely. It felt devastating and cruel for exactly 1 week. Then it felt like oxygen. I fled to a smaller city. Bought a modest home. Nothing flashy, nothing I had to justify. And I started fiercely mentoring students who reminded me of myself. Quiet achievers. Invisible contributors. People who didn't need rescuing, just space to grow, without being crushed. My parents stopped calling after 6 agonizing months. Marcus moved on to another story, another villain. And for the first time in my entire shattered life, my silence wasn't weakness. It was peace. Final message. Here's what I learned through devastating pain. You can love people and still refuse to be consumed by them. You can honor your family and still choose yourself. And you are not selfish for protecting what you built. If you're watching this and you've spent your entire life shrinking so others could feel powerful, if you've been called strong as a weapon to justify being neglected, if you've ever been told you owe someone your future because they gave you your past, hear this. You're not cruel for setting boundaries. You're not heartless for walking away. And you do not owe your success to people who never protected your struggle. I didn't abandon my family. I stopped letting them abandon me while calling it love. There's a critical difference, and understanding that difference saved my life. If this story shook you, leave a comment right now. Tell me your version. I'm reading every single one, because I promise you're not alone in this pain. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is stop being strong for people who only valued your silence. Thanks for watching.